See it. You get some of that energy that these plays have on stage, and I think that's one of the reasons it's working. People read the comic and they kind of feel the energy, and all of a sudden they're not thinking, man, Shakespeare is 400 years old and a dead white dude. They're like, man, this is an awesome story.
So we're here with Mr. Conor
Peace.
from the Kill Shakespeare series. What's the concept all about?
Well, Kill Shakespeare is basically we're taking all the Bard's greatest heroes, most menacing villains, and we're putting them in the same world, the same story, on a quest to either kill or save this reclusive wizard named William Shakespeare.
Why comics?
I'm a comics fan, man. I grew up loving comics. I read Spider-Man, I read Moon Knight, I read, Batman when I was a kid. I dug it. And then a few years ago when I was working on a kid's TV show, I needed a part-time job, and I went back, worked at this comic shop for a while, and I started reading all this crazy stuff, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, I was reading Warren Ellis, some really heavy stuff. And that made me see how interesting comics are to tell a story in, because I'm a film and TV guy originally. And the more we did it, the more we realized that comics are kind of magical in their nature, right? They're, guys have superpowers, weird stuff happens. And Shakespeare is all about, kind of weird stuff happening, magical characters, bigger than life situations. So it ended up being a really good merger. It was a good way to tell these kind of made up new Shakespeare stories in a comic format. And Shakespeare is something that you really need to see. Like reading a play kind of sucks, but if you see it, you can actually get why these stories have lasted for 400 years. And so in a comic, you can see it. You get some of that energy that these plays have on stage, and I think that's one of the reasons it's working. People read the comic and they kind of feel the energy, and all of a sudden they're not thinking, man, Shakespeare is 400 years old and a dead white dude. They're like, man, this is an awesome story.
What has this led you to?
You know what? For us, this is leading us to film, video games, merchandise. We were just in San Diego at Comic-Con, chatting with video game producers, chatting with some people who do some really sick merchandise, like high-end vinyl figures, which I love. And we were in Los Angeles, and we were really fortunate. We got to meet the two biggest agencies. We were able to meet with a bunch of lawyers and producers, and so far we have a lot of interest, and we actually have several firm offers of people who want to represent us or help us make this thing into a film.
So it's going to be a 12-issue series.
Yeah, that's right.
And right now you're at issue number 4.
Yeah, 4 just came out to the beginning of this month in August. Issue 5 drops beginning of September. 6 is in October, and then the first trade, if you haven't caught it up, you don't know where a comic shop is, you can go to Chapters Indigo in early November, and you can pick up our trade paperback, which is issues 1 through 6, all collected. Probably be like $22 or something like that.
Are you going to get into schools and stuff with this?
Yeah, actually, we're really lucky. We've already been at a school in Belleville, of all places. We already did a symposium there, did a little bit about how to make comic books, and chatted a little bit about Shakespeare. But we've had a lot of teachers and a lot of librarians who either think this is a good way for a kid who doesn't want to read to get into Shakespeare, or if you read Shakespeare, this is a good way to kind of really contextualize it and play around with the characters and show how much you understand, what the Bard was up to.
What's your background and how did you get into this?
I was a business student. Graduated from Wilfrid Laurier, had a minor in theater, so I guess that's where the Shakespeare thing came from. And then I worked as a journalist for a while, but I also, on the side, I was always doing these film and TV projects. I had a couple things optioned, a couple things in development here in Canada. And so myself and Anthony, the other co-creator, we were always working on ideas. And, we, like I said, we had a bunch that got almost over the bar. And then this was just the first one that we were able to push over the bar. We raised some money, we pushed it forward ourselves, and it's been really nice to, to finally see one of your projects actually going forward and not just in a test stage or not just in, in a screenplay stage.
Can you give the kids a sample scenario that they're going to run into when they read it?
Sure. Well, I'll take something from issue 4, which just came out. That has Othello, and for those of you who don't know, Othello is this badass Moor who was a general in Shakespeare's play. And in our world, he's sort of Han Solo. He's kind of this sword for hire bounty hunter. So in issue 4, he's protecting Juliet Capulet from Romeo and Juliet because she's leading this rebellion against, the big baddies Richard and Macbeth. And so Richard's men come to take Juliet and take her to jail, and Othello pulls out his swords, and there's probably about 5 or 6 pages of blood, chopped off hands. Othello does a pretty thorough job on these dudes. And that was one of the fun things about Shakespeare is, as much as we're trying to do all the great storytelling, and we want to talk about love and about family and emotion and things like that, Shakespeare, his plays are filled with beheadings, with people getting their eyes gouged out, with some really hardcore stuff. So for us, it's a lot of fun to work with our artist Andy B and to get to go between the hardcore action and then to tell some really good story.
But the characters are internationally known,
Yeah.
beloved. How are you being received by the scholars?
You know what? Really well, except for so far almost every scholar digs it, because one of the things about Shakespeare is he's been redone and redone for the last 400 years. I mean, you see Baz Luhrmann with his Romeo and Juliet movie a few years ago. Even something like Shakespeare in Love. People have always reinvented the bards, so most scholars look at what we're doing. They think we've got a good grasp on the Shakespeare angle. They think we're doing some really fun, exciting stuff with the comic book, and they like it. Although we did have one woman who said that we should be bitch slapped, that we made her throw up in her mouth, and she repeatedly said that what we were doing was bullshit. And what the real kicker about that is this woman, Kimberly Cox, is the girlfriend of Frank Miller, who of course is the guy who made Sin City, 300, Batman Year One. So yeah, there's been, she's the one notable detractor, but hey, that's cool. It just shows that people care about Shakespeare and that at least we're doing something that's getting a reaction.
What else you want to put out there?
We've been working on, we got a couple kids TV shows that we're working forward on. Like everybody else in the world, I've got my own vampire idea that I came up with when I watched Last Boys like 20 years ago. And we got a bunch of video game stuff we're working on as well. But right now, for the next probably half year, we just got to finish the comic book. We did a screenplay first, so we're going to go back, rewrite the screenplay, and then that's what we're going to be ultimately selling in Hollywood. And yeah, once we get that done, then we can sort of focus on some of these other ideas. But Kill Shakespeare's broke for us, and it's going to be the beginning of a long career for Anthony and I, telling stories and doing some cool shit.
So, killshakespeare.com and the local comic store.
Yeah, local comic store. If you've got an iPhone, iPad, you can download it from iTunes. And in November, you can go to Chapters Indigo and pick up the trade.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.